1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Good morning, everybody. This is a live severe weather update as we have a lot to talk about again with another substantial severe weather day expected today, and especially this evening and overnight along this warm frontal zone. These are my target areas. Here you can see this area in pink. That's where I think the tornado threat is going to be maximized along a warm frontal zone that's being reinforced by a convective complex this morning moving through central Tennessee. And this is definitely a scary setup along this warm frontal zone. There is a jet streak, a compact jet streak that's going to eject from Arkansas later on this evening by about 22-23Z, and that should fire storms very close to the Memphis area, and those supercells should ride right along that warm frontal zone. That's where the strongest overlap is between thermodynamics and that low-level shear along that warm frontal zone. But I do expect a widespread event today. There's going to be supercells all the way back into northeastern Texas. I do think that to the south of that warm frontal zone, wind shear is going to be a little bit less favorable in the low levels for a tornado threat, but still plenty of bulk shear, deep layer shear to sustain long track supercells there through the delta of southeastern and eastern Arkansas. And definitely is a potential for monster hailers to come out of eastern Arkansas, moving toward the lower Mississippi River Valley by evening. And I do think there is a low-end chance of an isolated tornado or two down there in addition to that massive hail threat. But really the maximum strong tornado potential is going to be central southern Tennessee, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, potential long track supercells riding along that warm frontal zone. And I have seen a lot of similarities being made to the March 3rd, 2020 event when Cookeville, Tennessee sustained such a devastating tornado, and that tornado went through parts of Nashville as well. And even though there are some similarities in general with the upper level pattern, I do think that there's going to be a little bit less coupling between the upper level jet dynamics and that surface low that really was required on March 3rd to get a surface-based storm to drill through marginal dew points in a shallow stable layer, and really required a strong tornado cyclone to have that tornado touch down. Today, there's ample moisture along this warm frontal zone. Dew points are going to be in the upper 60s up there to near 70. The atmosphere is definitely juicy along that warm front, and I don't think that you need the perfect coupling with the upper level jet structure and the surface low to generate a strong tornado threat. I think it's going to happen regardless of the evolution of that coupling between the low levels and the upper levels in terms of dynamics. The upper level jet structure, when you get lift in the upper levels due to the interaction of a jet exit and jet entrance region, that creates focused lift in the upper levels of the atmosphere and surface pressure falls, which can help storms in marginal thermodynamic environments drill down to the surface and still produce tornadoes. And in this case, you generally have a coupled upper level jet structure with the entrance region and left exit region relatively coupled with that new jet coming in through the eastern Arkansas. But not perfect coupling this time. The surface low meanders up toward Illinois a bit more as that jet coupling lifts off to the north. Then another little compact jet comes in through eastern Arkansas, firing the storms that will ride along this warm frontal zone evening through the overnight period. But definitely a very different setup than the one from a couple days ago when we had a high risk, but one that could be just as dangerous out here over a different area, central southern Tennessee, right along that Mississippi-Alabama border, northern Mississippi into northern Alabama. And it's going to be a nocturnal event, it appears, as well. Looking at the RAP forecast for 19Z, definitely shows that warm frontal zone setting up there in central Tennessee. This is the complex of storms moving off to the east that helps to reinforce this warm frontal zone, and it should inch just a little bit further north up to the Memphis to Jackson area into eastern Arkansas. And by 19Z, it's possible that early storms could develop along that outflow boundary / warm frontal zone as well. But the wind shear doesn't ramp up until about 0Z, so closer to sunset and the overnight hours, with the ejection of that compact upper level jet streak there coming into eastern Arkansas. That's going to help to just back these winds a little bit, increase that southwesterly low level jet just above the ground up to 40 knots, maybe even greater than that. And then the wind shear is going to ramp up and continue to ramp up as we go through the overnight hours across this corridor, as indicated by the RAP. And here is the 500 millibar level of non-divergence here, basically the mid-levels of the atmosphere. Shows you this neutrally tilted primary trough, and then you have this vortex lagging back behind down into New Mexico into Texas. And when I was looking at this event in the long range, it looked like we were starting to trend away from this early season personality here, with Dixie Alley getting hammered with these events. And this wave looked a little bit weaker. This one was dominating and likely to shear out over top this anticyclone, but it's instead resulting in a substantial severe weather event, kind of the coupling of this structure. You've got this jet streak right here. You've got a more subtle jet streak coming in from the south here, and really the left exit region there and the right entrance region are two areas of lift in the upper level jet structure, and that lift is going to overspread the warm sector and that warm frontal zone that should migrate a little bit north into western Tennessee and northeastern Arkansas, and should fire storms that very easily could travel right along that boundary. But in general, you can see with this upper level jet structure, there is a large area of strong 50 plus knot mid-level flow, mid and upper level flow here across the target area. And as you just saw with that RAP analysis too, huge instability, a massive Cape blob down there just to the south of that coupled structure. And this jet streak is going to rip around to the east of this dying out vortex on the southern end. And this coupled jet structure is going to come over the north side of that Cape blob, and that's where that reinforced warm front also resides, the greater instability. This is 300 millibars above the level of non-divergence. You can kind of depict that upper level jet structure a little bit more. And this is at 0Z, and you can see this jet streak ejecting from northeastern Arkansas there. Here you can see this primary storm system. Basically, this little lobe of vorticity is shearing out, and the jet streak ejects out ahead of that zone. But in general, this jet streak isn't quite as prominent. So really this potent jet streak coming out of northeastern Arkansas as the surface low meanders up toward Illinois is going to be the player here, the trigger mechanism to generate those storms. The lift associated with that jet streak forecast to migrate out of northeastern Arkansas by about 5-6 p.m. tonight. And then it starts to excite a low-level jet. This is the 850 millibar winds. This is the low-level jet here, excited by the pressure falls from the upper-level jet dynamics just to its northwest. And this is at 0Z, and these ramp up well above 40 knots in this zone. And as is usual the case, you usually want to target the nose of that low-level jet, right where it meets up with that warm frontal boundary. That's going to be the action zone from about 6 or 7 p.m. and continuing through the overnight hours. You definitely want to keep an eye on this if you live in central southern Tennessee, far northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, even back into eastern southeastern Arkansas with those monster hailers coming out. There still is a pretty stout low-level jet down there, and if some of those storms can develop deviant motions and turn right into that low-level jet, there is a chance of an isolated tornado with those storms as well. And here's the RAP showing that subtle surface low lifting up into Illinois. I've seen some of the models even fire some supercells up there into southern Illinois along that surface low track. That's also probably a tertiary mode that you could target if you live in that region as a storm chaser. It's also possible that that jet streak coming out of northeastern Arkansas could lead to more dramatic pressure falls closer to that coupled jet streak. And then we may look at more of a March 3rd, 2020 event, except with very ample moisture and more favorable low-level thermodynamics. But every setup's different, that's for sure. That's one thing you learn going through this, the more setups that you see. Here is the surface map And look at all these juicy dew points, near 70 dew points surging up through northern Mississippi. You can see all these horizontal pink lines up there in western Tennessee, up into Memphis. That's just north of the warm front. Stratus clouds there, relative stable layer just to the north of that. And that boundary between the stable environment, which is up into Tennessee right now, and the warm, humid air off to its south, that boundary right along the Mississippi-Tennessee border is going to be the focus zone. And show you this low-level jet increase. That's 0Z. This is 3Z. Look at that thing ramp up into southwestern Tennessee there, far northern Mississippi, right near the border. You're talking in excess of 50 knots. That's 3Z about 10 p.m. As we get closer to midnight, low-level jet continues to increase. Kind of painting a picture of that dangerous environment that's going to migrate even toward the Nashville area. Look at that warm front lifting up to near the Tennessee-Kentucky border, according to the NAM. That's the 6Z NAM. You can, of course, look at the 12Z NAM now. And the 12Z NAM between 6 and 12Z brings that warm front a little bit further south. That makes sense because the RAP model this morning has that complex of storms that's going to reinforce that warm frontal zone. And in fact, maintains quite a bit of instability and low-level shear down into northern Mississippi for that mode coming out of eastern and southeastern Arkansas late. And at 0Z, you can see the energy helicity index is really focused over southeastern Arkansas, driven by the extreme Cape values down there. That's more of an indicator of the massive hail threat that's going to evolve down there as well. Southeastern eastern Arkansas, though, still could have a decent tornado threat as well. In fact, look at the photographs. That's probably inside of a tainted one, tainted sounding. Well, yeah, look at that environment morph into northern Mississippi. But really, you want to, let's look at the 3-kilometer NAM and see what it does with that warm front. Shows a more sharp warm frontal zone here by 10 p.m., but the 3-kilometer NAM settles that warm front even into far northern Mississippi there, just a little bit south of the Memphis area. Seems like the 3-kilometer NAM is kind of underestimating the slight northward push that should happen with that warm frontal zone. But look at this massive instability, and right along the northern periphery of that instability zone, out ahead of that jet streak that is forecast to push out of northeastern Arkansas. That's when these storms are going to initiate. So some subtle differences, the timing and strength of that jet structure. This is at 2Z, so about 9 p.m. You can see this kind of warm front in place, reinforced by that convection. And this is the zone by 2Z. Probably have supercell storms to the east of Jackson out here along this warm frontal zone. There they are. This is the lead one here. This one's probably going to be a monster tornado producer. You can see the ones back to the southwest, some big hail cores coming out of southeastern Arkansas, but a little bit more of a strung out appearance, more multicellular out there, some transient supercell structures. These are the storms that will have the greatest tornado potential here. That's at 0Z, so just to the east of the Jackson area, even further east than that. I wouldn't be surprised if some of these produce as well down near that warm frontal zone, down into northwestern Georgia, southeastern Tennessee. Supercells all over the place, and these setups are notorious for being big severe weather outbreaks, big hail, big impactful severe weather, tornadoes. Right along the ring of fire here, the northern periphery of that instability axis, that blob of Cape. You can see it really well with the EHI indices. And you can also see how the EHIs are enhanced right along the northern periphery there, where you have just a little bit 0 to 1 kilometer and 0 to 3 kilometer shear along that northern periphery. Even the 3 kilometer Cape is maximized along the ring of fire there. 23Z, you can definitely see a maximized area of 0 to 3 kilometer Cape. This is likely where the storms are going to initiate by about 5 or 6 p.m., maybe in eastern Arkansas here, just to the southwest of Memphis. You can see co-located with that area of 0 to 3 kilometer Cape, though, you've got a lot of veered out flow. Decent photographs. They are just a little bit straight line here early in the period, but they definitely get more and more favorable with time as you go through the day. There, look at those photographs, how they get more favorable as you go through the overnight hours after evening. While you're maintaining quite a bit of Cape here, fueled by these juicy dew points. Much higher than that March 3rd, 2020 event. You've got dew points well into the upper 60s to near 70 out there. Very favorable photograph of that southwesterly low-level jet increasing up to 50 knots. A lot of area there between the photograph and that storm motion vector. And especially if you have a storm motion a little bit closer to due east, then you really get those critical angles closer to 60, 70 degrees and rapidly expand that low-level storm relative helicity there. There's that jet streak by 2Z, nosing into central Tennessee there. Likely supercells just ahead of that jet streak with tornado potential. Take a look at the SPC outlook. I didn't see it yet this morning. It's like a pretty large enhanced risk area there. So extending from southeastern Arkansas into central Tennessee. The strong tornado potential by the Storm Prediction Center does extend back into eastern Arkansas. So my computer's flipping out, everybody. But I do think that this area in southeastern Arkansas is probably going to be a little bit more of a hailer threat, but we'll just have to continue to monitor it. I do think that the northern part of this risk is where the greatest potential for strong tornadoes resides. But that strong low-level jet does extend well back into southeastern Arkansas as well. And that's beautiful storm chasing terrain out there, that's for sure. And after evening, especially just after 0Z, that low-level shear really ramps up. There you can see this complex off to the north on the RAP analysis. You can definitely see some anticyclonic curvature to the flow out there. Then you start getting some cyclonic curvature to the low-level flow back to the west. There's that warm frontal zone. I remember the video I posted last night that showed those pink towers, convective towers down to the south, down near Meridian, associated with the lifting north of this warm frontal zone. And this is by 23Z. You can see that reinforced warm frontal zone just inching into southwestern Tennessee. This is at 20Z, so about 2 p.m. Shows a supercell trying to develop near the Jackson area. Other supercells developing back toward Memphis. Southeastern Arkansas, supercells developing. But look at the RAP analysis at 20Z. Definitely has the strongest low-level storm relative helicity starting to emerge there in southwestern Tennessee by about 2 to 3 p.m. So if those storms get going to the east of Memphis up in that warm frontal zone just to the north of the Mississippi border, could be a chance that this tornado outbreak could even get going at about 2 or 3 p.m., but it's only going to ramp up as we go through the evening and the overnight along this ring of fire. You still got a nose of a 30-knot low-level jet punching into southwestern Tennessee with those storms evolving on the front. It's possible those could just lift north into the stable air pretty quickly. Oh boy, a juicy environment to the south of this. And then all this ejects off to the east across the mid-Atlantic. And we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that as well. I'm going to have to blast all the way east and then chase the mid-Atlantic additionally. But you know what? I can sleep when I die. I'm just going to keep chasing in the meantime. I think that the NAM is overestimating the strength of this morning convection. It looks like it's really starting to peter out now. The question really is, do you want to work this warm frontal zone or head into eastern Arkansas all by yourself and chase those hailers and supercells with greater instability down here? Look at these supercells in southeastern Arkansas, down into the open warm sector, down into western Mississippi. This is at 21Z. You've got supercells developing along the warm frontal zone in western Tennessee, likely tornado producers there. PDS tornado soundings up along that warm front up there as well. That's at 21Z. I'm only an hour south of Memphis right now. And those soundings are only going to get more favorable. Let's take a look down here into southeastern Arkansas, see how they differ. You can see that the hodograph shape is not as large down into southeastern Arkansas despite this monster cape. So it's possible that slightly reduced kinematics could be offset by greater instability for these storms down into northeastern Texas, southern Arkansas, southeastern Arkansas. And then you've got this warm frontal zone in western Tennessee as well. Look at these storms going nuts, even back toward northwestern Louisiana. It's got a couple of supercells. This is the 12ZH-RRR. Probably want to be on this lead supercell. You can always go back west and get on the next one back behind it. See if we can find a sounding in the inflow zone. PDS tornado soundings throughout. A little bit of a tainted sounding, but I took it just ahead of that storm a bit. But definitely plenty of surface-based instability, dew points in the upper 60s. Definitely a PDS tornado sounding. Low-level jet already starting to increase here as we inch a little bit closer to 0Z. I think going up toward Jackson or Memphis is definitely the play here and just working this I-40 corridor. And then you get these supercells coming out of southeastern Arkansas. See how the hodographs look like as we're going with time, getting closer to 6. You still have these smallish looking hodographs, but they have a decent shape, and you've got a lot of cape out here. It's possible that the strong cape and the strong 0 to 3 kilometer cape could cause a strong tornado threat down here as well. It could offset kind of the smallish hodograph size. You can see the 0 to 1 kilometer helicity not as great back there, but really pumping along that warm frontal zone into southern Tennessee at 23Z, 6 p.m. And only increasing out ahead of that storm as you go into central Tennessee. By 1Z, 8 p.m., right near sunset, still PDS tornado soundings. So I think that's the play. I'm going to work the I-40 corridor up there in Tennessee. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to my weather reports this morning. Stay safe, everybody. Stay tuned to those watches and warnings. Have a severe weather safety plan in place. Information saves lives, so stay tuned to those severe weather watches and those warnings. This is basically my target area. I wrote hailers mostly down there into southeastern Arkansas, but I think there's going to be tornadoes down there. Even though the hodographs are a little bit smaller, greater instability should offset those hodograph small sizes with the hodographs, but still a very favorable shape to the shear profiles down there as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. I'll be back in chase mode here. I'm going to get some breakfast. I need some fiber bad, but I'm going to try to eat about 4 or 5 eggs this morning to get some protein to go through the overnight tonight, and then hopefully make it up and over the Appalachians to chase the mid-Atlantic setup tomorrow. Never stop chasing.